is the ultimate test of the human mind, isn't it?
You think so? I always thought it was women.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Columbo podcast, where we are studying hard for the ultimate test of the human mind.
Working on your openings, Gerry.
The Fool's Gambit, or Fool's Mate, I think it's called.
I think that applies to both the situations.
How are we, Ian?
Not too bad. Had a reasonable week.
Not great news following last week's podcast.
Very sad news and unbelievable timing. We've just been talking in episode 13 about Leonard Nimoy and his fabulous appearance on Columbo, only to learn that he passed away between the recording and the release of our episode.
Yeah, sad news indeed, Ian.
Yeah, we've had some great contributions from some of our community on the columbopodcast.com entry for last week's blog. Anyone who feels they want to contribute to that, it's great. We read everything, and there's been some wonderful engagement in there. We love all the engagement that we get on Twitter and on the forums. We've had some great reviews on iTunes, and those are things that help us an awful lot. Particularly the iTunes reviews, they help people find the podcast. So to help the community keep growing and to keep building up in the support, we'd love star reviews and star ratings and reviews on iTunes. It's all very helpful. So thanks to everyone who's done it already, and I'd encourage anyone who hasn't, if you could take the time to do that, it would be a big help to us.
This week's episode, Ian, what did you think of it generally?
Last week we talked about the name, The Most Dangerous Match, and I speculated it might be to do with a forest fire of some kind. Turns out not to be the case. I doubted it was about sports, because I know that in America they don't usually use the term match for a sporting encounter. And so it proved it was a game that we had.
It was. Before we go on to discuss the episode in a bit more detail, why don't you give us this week's summary?
The Most Dangerous Match pitches Columbo against a chess grandmaster in a battle of wits. When Emmett Clayton realises he faces defeat in a legacy-defining game with former champion Clayton and Dudek, his ego demands that he dispose of his rival. Columbo must square off with a genius, but in this new contest the rules are different. In a dramatic endgame, the lieutenant must put all the pieces in place before the game is lost and a killer walks free.
We had a very strange opening this week. Unusual.
Yes.
It was what turned out, or what transpired to be a dream sequence.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird one. We saw a little bit last week when we had the hallucinogenic sequence.
Psychedelic almost.
Yeah. It was almost a similar sort of thing. It was a different effect, but it was done in a similar sort of way. So you're not immediately clear what's going on, but it's obviously not real because you've got giant chess pieces turning into people, and
quite eerie, suspenseful music, and we see a man in slow motion running through this life-size chessboard.
Yes,
he's confused and scared, and then the pieces start to surround him in a claustrophobic
manner. It reminded me a bit of the first Harry Potter movie. They've got the giant chess set, and they're competing in that, but obviously this predates that by some decades. But it was an interesting reminder. It doesn't last for long though, because he wakes up.
Well, the man falls over in the dream, and we see him in bed in real life, falling out of bed.
Yeah.
He awakes with a start, and he's in a sweat, and the credits roll at this point, so it's an early credit this time.
Yet again, I think that's all but the first couple of episodes of this season have had that, and you wonder if that's now what we're going to have, because it's been some time, over a month since we had credits that weren't right at the start of the episode.
The man looks in the mirror, and he puts on what appears to be a hearing aid, a fairly old school hearing aid. It wasn't
obvious to me at first. I didn't know what that was. I thought it was some...
a radio,
with my modern mind, I didn't know, is it something to do with music? Is it something... I wasn't sure if he was going to be getting coaching through it or something like that.
Ah, yeah.
So I didn't know whether it was a transistor of some kind.
A bit like Goldfinger, where Auric Goldfinger is cheating at rummy.
Yeah. Yep. But he collects himself in any event. He seems to have recovered from his nightmare.
We go down to the man is in a hotel bedroom.
Yeah.
And we get down to the hotel lobby, and he enters the lobby, and there are reporters who surround him.
Yeah, we find out his name's Emmett Clayton, and he's a chess grandmaster.
He has an important match the next day, and the reporters are jostling to ask him questions and firing questions at him.
Yeah, it's clearly a big event. There's a lot of interest in this.
And Clayton advises that, in a light-hearted moment, that he's going to have a small martini, if he can, a large steak, and hopefully a nice horror movie if there's one showing nearby.
This is his way to relax
and
ahead of a big game.
unwind. He's asked about his opponent the next day, and he says that chess is never only a game, but that he's treating this as just another match. So he's trying to portray an air of confidence, which you would expect that he should have in this circumstance.
Well, you would think, I mean, we're told he's a grandmaster, so you expect he's one of the leading players in the world at that time.
Yes, I think he's, at this point in time, the number one player. But his opponent is a Clayton and Dudek, and he admits that he is a worthy adversary, and he's a former world champion. But his confidence may be misplaced, because we find out something about the history of Dudek. I think we've got a clip here which explains in a bit more detail.
Mr. Clayton, do you know what the reporters from Dudek's country are saying? They are saying that you could have never become champion, you never would have been champion.
Oh, that again.
If Clayton and Dudek hadn't gotten sick and hadn't had to retire 5 years ago.
Yes, I've heard and read some of you gentlemen speculating about that a bit. Most unpatriotic, you know. Well, come morning, we'll all be settling our lingering little doubts, won't we? Now, if you'll excuse me.
Hey, how about a picture of the two of you?
Yeah, in the summary I described the match as legacy defining, and I think we come to learn that that's how Clayton sees it as well.
Sure. So Dudek is perhaps regarded as the true champion.
Certainly by people in his country, which is not ever defined clearly.
And then Dudek himself, he appears in the lobby.
He does.
And the crowd disperses or moves away from Clayton and gather around this legendary champion. He's described, I think, as a chess genius, and he's come out of retirement to play Dudek.
Yep, it's almost like one will stand, one will fall.
Mm-hmm. And Clayton, I think we're led to believe he appears to be American. And Dudek, they never actually define his nationality.
I was just saying we don't find out what his country is, but clearly they're using Eastern European accents. Yeah. And Dudek's a Polish name?
I think it is Polish. We're meant to obviously to believe that it's Russia, but politically at the time they probably didn't want to pinpoint
Soviet
that exactly.
In some way.
Yes.
This is back in the days of the USSR, the Greater Russia. So
yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. This is obviously, this episode is based on the rivalry between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky.
Right.
Are you aware of this?
I know Bobby Fischer's name, and I know of some other, chess, and I know that chess was a big deal for quite a while, but I don't know the specifics.
So, I think the previous year, there was this major match between Fischer and Spassky.
Right.
The attention of the world, not just the sort of chess world, but it was headline news, certainly in America and around the world, in Russia. So, huge story, and I think that did increase the popularity of chess as a game, and its profile, and this episode is obviously trying to hang on to the coattails of this sort of infamy at the time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we see Dudek's match arranger or fixer, and she's looking at Clayton, and Dudek is amused at what he calls the daggers that she's
throwing shade, as they would say nowadays. Certainly there seems to be some degree of loathing there. I think we learn later that she was engaged to Clayton, but they don't take that thread anywhere.
No, I wanted to discuss that and have a chat about that.
Sure.
I think it was quite an irrelevant subplot that you thought might go somewhere, but in my view, the episode did not in any way benefit and would not have missed this relationship not being there. So we find that that she is an ex-fiance of Clayton. Nothing happens with that. It doesn't drive the plot forward. We don't find out anything that may be, in fact, the opposite. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. but Columbo has to tease out from her later on, from her name's Linda Robinson. And Columbo has to really tease out from her and find out that he's got a photographic memory.
Yeah, I mean, I don't entirely agree with your assessment of this. My feeling is that it's a good thing that they throw the audience some of these red herrings. This is something that could be a major issue, and then no, it's nothing. So it's in your mind as you watch. You're thinking, oh, something's going to come from this, something's going to happen, and then it just doesn't. You
think that's a deliberate ploy by the writers, or just that they wrote this and then didn't take it anywhere?
It could be either, but I think it plays okay in the episode. I think it's on your mind, so you're thinking, oh, what's she going to do? Is she going to drop him in it? Is she going to have a vendetta against him? Is she going to pin something on him? And the fact that she doesn't, I think, is as big a deal as if she had.
Okay.
If it was so obvious, she's the, jilted lover and she's going to do something bad, that would be almost an obvious thing.
Fine. So Dudek's quite amused at her frosted relationship with Clayton. He tells her to go out and enjoy herself. He'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We'll deal with the match tomorrow.
Sure, he seems quite a good-natured sort of amiable bloke. He's not vindictive, or he doesn't have this sort of aggressive streak going.
I think it's a case of him being older, having been there, done it. He knows, he puts things into perspective a little bit more. It's not his sole purpose in life, I don't think.
But I think also going on the dynamic you talked about earlier, where you've got the Soviets as the big bad, to have him portrayed as a positive and friendly character is a twist on that almost.
Yeah. I think it was fairly brave in those days for an American show to show the American in this relationship being the bad guy.
Sure, I'm not sure. I mean, you referred to the Bobby Fischer game from the previous year, and I'm not sure what the characteristics of those two people were, but whether there's been almost a flip to a certain extent, and to have the Eastern European / Russian guy as the good guy, I think that's an interesting development.
Sure. So they sort of dispersed from the lobby, and Clayton, he's hanging around. He's keeping an eye on Dudek.
Yeah.
And he sees Dudek leave the hotel, and Clayton follows him. And he follows him through the streets, and he finds him in a little restaurant. But you notice something. I
noticed something on the way. They passed a shop called Lovejoy's Antiques.
And for those who may not know what the significance of that is,
well, there's more than one. Obviously, Ian McShane, who some listeners might know better from Deadwood, was
Sexy Beast.
He was very well known in the UK back in the 90s for a show called Lovejoy, where he played an antique dealer.
Yeah.
So that was the immediate connection for me, and I'm thinking, well, how can that be? Because the 90s were 20 years after this.
Yeah. Now, the Lovejoy TV show was based on a series of books.
And that makes more sense.
It does. However, I did a little bit of research, and unfortunately, the first book was not written until 1977.
So I wonder if there is an older connection or something that both those books and this shop come from, or if the books come from having seen this.
Yeah.
If anyone in the audience or the listeners at home can tell us what the connection is, if there is a connection, because surely this cannot just be coincidental.
Who knows?
Then let us know.
Who knows? So we go into this restaurant.
Yes, we find out the name of the restaurant later, and we'll tell you at that point. But Dudek wanders in and Clayton follows him. And
Dudek admits that he wanted Clayton to follow him.
Yeah, the feeling I got is that Dudek lured Clayton in.
And he asked him to sit down and join him.
Yeah, it seems unusual to me that they're not followed by reporters. They come from a lobby full of reporters originally. Nowadays you would have paparazzi and so on if it was that big a deal. But no, the two of them are able to secrete themselves away alone.
Clayton accuses Dudek of attempting psychological warfare by, I suppose, using his fiancée to be the fact that she's involved in this whole.
Yeah, there's a bit of a clunky exposition here. The thing that I found interesting with the use of the phrase psychological warfare, because that's been toned down these days, you would call that mind games. And warfare is a much more
sinister
explosive term,
especially when you consider the other.
Well, it's mid-Cold War as well, so
yeah, the political implications.
And I think, yes, perhaps that is a play on the times and the context and the not subplot, but the subtext.
Sure. Clayton also reveals that he saw Dudek leave the hotel at lunchtime, and Dudek confirms that he did. So he's got a team around him. He's got his manager. He's got this fixer of the games, Linda. He also has a PT coach,
Yeah.
and they're looking after him, his entourage, and they don't want him to be not looking after himself. He's not in the best of physical condition, and he enjoys food, especially the escargot.
Yeah, Clayton looks at him like he's a crazy person when he orders the snails.
So he's been sneaking out in order to indulge in his favourite food. The relationship seems fairly familiar or unantagonistic.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any kind of drama between them or antipathy or anything like that.
And Clayton's obviously more driven. He's the younger man. He's not been established as the greatest player in the world in his day. So
he's also got this doubt lingering over the fact whether he's a legitimate champion or not.
And he suggests that chess is the ultimate test. And this is the clip we heard at the start.
Yeah, we heard it at the opening to the show. Dudek doesn't agree with his assessment.
So the waiter looks quite bemused because what happens next is they start to play chess on the checkered tablecloth.
Yeah, I mean, he's initially bemused and later exasperated.
Mm-hmm. Again, I think this is another nod to Bobby Fischer.
Okay.
He was known to, in any situation, pull out a chessboard or start playing on the table itself. I'm sure I watched a documentary on the match I referred to, and I think that was the thing, that even after, at the dinner before or after the competition, Bobby Fischer was so one-track mind that he couldn't just relax and enjoy himself, and he would constantly be trying to play chess and work out moves or discuss previous
Right.
matches and games. Very obsessive. Some time passes through the night, and they're in the middle of a game. Clayton appears to be playing aggressively, or Dudek does, but Clayton's under pressure.
Yeah, he clearly, this matters to him, this game of improvised chess.
Well, I think it's the psychological upper hand here, isn't it? If
Yeah.
whoever wins this will be mentally in a stronger position.
Well, you see, yeah, and I think that's a tactical error certainly from Clayton.
Mhm.
At the point where he starts to worry about his chances of winning the game, he must know that Dudek knows as well. So why has he allowed himself to go in that? Unless he was so confident he was going to win, why would you play a serious game at this point?
Can't help himself.
Yeah, I think that's a strategic error. If he had played and deliberately made huge errors,
Sure.
then Dudek wouldn't have gained any information.
So Clayton, as we say, is under pressure, and he adjusts his hearing aid, and at this point he confirms that he can lip read,
Yes.
which becomes quite important later on.
Yeah, this was the first point where I realised he was actually deaf, because I hadn't picked up on the hearing aid being a hearing aid.
Okay.
I just think that I realised that the guy's psychologically fragile at this moment, but he puts so much emphasis and weight on this one game of chess that it seems irrational.
Yeah. More time passes, and the restaurant is about to close.
I think it's already closed. I think
Yeah.
everybody else is away.
And Dudek appears to be certainly getting the better of Clayton. And Clayton claims that he can't concentrate, so he sort of gets a little bit upset, doesn't he? And
He's rattled.
Yeah, rattled. And they leave the restaurant with the game undecided.
Yeah,
But Dudek certainly being in the stronger position, I would have guessed.
yeah, and they agree that they need to sneak into the hotel separately because they can't be seen together.
Sure. We're now at Clayton's bedroom, and there's a knock at the door.
That's right.
And Borowski, he's the coach of Dudek.
Yeah.
He knocks the door, and he's looking for Dudek, who's not in his room.
Yeah, and Clayton says he doesn't know where he is, and why would he be seeing him the night before the big game?
And he accuses this again of being more sort of psychological warfare, of trying to...
Yeah, they're disturbing his sleep.
yeah.
Yeah, and you've got this terrible accent from the
Borowski.
coach, yeah.
Yeah, he apologises and leaves. The door closes and we see Dudek appear from the bathroom. So they were together. He went back to his Clayton's bedroom.
Yeah, to finish the game.
Yep. And Dudek shows him how the game that they're playing will pan out. So he basically finishes the game for him.
Yeah,
he says,
he
you'll
can
play this,
see-
I'll play that,
yeah.
etc., etc. And the result will be that I win.
Yeah, and Clayton's hallucination from his dream comes back with the the pain of defeat, and you can't handle that.
Mm-hmm. I think what we establish here is that Dudek is clearly the superior player.
Well, I think that's a big leap for me, because it's one game of chess. Somebody has to win each game, but it doesn't mean that he'll win every game. Unless Clayton feels he could not possibly have played any better, and he will always lose.
But it's not just the result of that one game. It's the fact that I don't believe that Clayton believed in himself. I think
now this is a common thing.
Dudek was so relaxed and so confident, and I believe that there was a reason for that, because he knew, and they both knew in fact, that he was a better player.
Maybe, but I think there's also a thing, and you see it, and I've read a lot about this with regards to people who work in startups and so on, this fear of failure, the feeling that you're a fraud and you're about to be exposed at any given moment. And it's not always a real thing. People can just feel that. And we know that Clayton is really good at chess.
Well, not when under pressure. The end scene would suggest otherwise, but we'll get to that.
Sure. But he's a grandmaster. He's risen to a high ranking. He's beaten a lot of people, clearly. He's won, Dudek being the notable exception, but he's won world championships, so he can't be...
No, he's not a dreadful player.
An everyday player. He must be really, really good at this.
Of course he is. He's probably the second best player on the planet. I think that's what they're trying to establish. But I think that just from this, that there's...
Yeah, but I just think that even if he's the second best player on the planet, there will be games where he can beat Dudek. It won't be a case that he will always lose to him.
I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Okay. I mean, maybe you know better than me. Are there any chess players who had a 100% record through their whole careers?
Well, I think the top players, when they're at the top of their game, it's like boxing, Floyd Mayweather. So he's not lost. Now that's not to say he can never be beat. He will be beat, or unless he retires.
Sure.
If they keep going. But Gary Kasparov, for example, I'm no chess expert here, but I probably believe that there was a period of a number of years, where he was unbeaten by man and machine. So I don't think he was defeated for a number of years in any significant tournament. I think he'd be undefeated. Just like, it's not like golf where you don't win everything. I think there's certain games in sports where if you are the best, you'll be undefeated for a period of time.
Sure. I mean, the impression that I got was not so much that Dudek was unbeatable, more that Clayton was so psychologically fragile he couldn't handle even the possibility of defeat. And perhaps that wasn't a true representation of things as they were. I don't think he was definitely going to lose. I just think he definitely believed he was going to lose.
But see, the other thing here in this scene, what happens is that Clayton notices how upset... Sorry, Dudek notices how upset Clayton is. And what he says is, it was just luck. Okay, now there's a couple of things about that. That's very patronising.
Humble brag.
Yes. There's no way a chess player, you don't, it's not luck. At this level, if you've been beaten, you've been beaten.
Yeah, and I think we've established previously the psychological warfare, the mind games. This is what's happened. Dudek has lured him into this situation and delivered what he believes is a crushing psychological blow.
And I think Clayton has a mini episode or breakdown.
I think a more confident man would not have been as strongly affected by this.
Yeah. Dudek's left and Clayton has more flashbacks. Dudek appears as one of the pieces again, and he throws his hearing aid at the wall in slow motion.
Yeah.
We go to the vets, and this is the introduction of Columbo.
Yes, this is an interesting one because it's a
pre-murder.
An earlier moment than you would normally be introduced to Columbo in an episode, and not in terms of time necessarily, but in terms of the plot.
And what we have here is Columbo playing checkers or drafts.
It's a nice contrast, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's quite the coincidence. It's also similar to the most crucial game.
Okay.
In that episode, he was very much into football, coincidentally.
Yeah.
And in this episode, he's playing drafts, which positions him as not quite. It's an inferior game to chess.
Yeah, it's not chess.
It's similar, but he's not quite as good, and I think that reflects the persona of Columbo, isn't it? And against his
I think it almost encapsulates the whole thing. The fact that Columbo is not perceived as being at that same level by any of the killers, or at least a great majority of the killers.
Yep. So Columbo has a problem with his dog, still called Dog. We don't know the name.
Yeah, he doesn't call it Dog. He just says none of the names have stuck.
And we have the wife trope. He says that this is typical. She's left town for the weekend or whatever, and lots of things have went wrong. I think the boiler or the cooker or something or other has happened. The dog's not well and he's a bit harassed.
Yes, he's a bit under the pressure.
He said he was going to go bowling last night, and this is interesting. He mentions a friend, Harry. I think this is the first time Columbo's, other than family references, have sort of delved into his private life. So
Sure.
He has a friend called Harry.
I wonder, is it anyone who's been in the show before? Have we had any Harrys?
Nope.
Okay, so it's a brand new character.
Mm-hmm. And is this another sport? So he plays, he bowls.
Yeah, we know he's good at golf.
And what was the other sport that he was good at? There was something else.
Pool. It's pool in Greenhouse Jungle. He can't miss a shot, remember?
Yeah. So it appears to be quite good at the non-aerobic sports. So you've got golf, you've got bowling, you've got pool.
Yeah, the kind of not pub games, but that sort of, yes, more sedentary activities.
And Columbo tells the vet that he got a false alarm about a missing chess champion, but it turns out that he himself went bowling the previous night, apparently.
Oh, there you go.
So we're back into Clayton's bedroom in the hotel, and what happens there, Iain?
Well, Clayton's visualising the garbage disposal. They saw when they sneaked back into the hotel the night before, they came in a back door and they saw this contraption which was used for crushing garbage. And he's got this in his mind, so obviously he's starting to formulate some kind of way to get out of playing this match that he thinks he's going to lose.
So we go to the lobby, and we see Clayton making a call to an airline, and he books a flight pretending to be Dudek.
Yeah, for some reason my notes say he's going to Aztec City, but
Mexico City, I'm pretty sure. He then calls Dudek and asks him to meet him somewhere, which he agrees to do.
Yeah, this is a strange one. I don't understand why Dudek thinks this is a thing to do. It seems to me unusual that he would do this. And
again, the risk is that he might have mentioned to one of his entourage, I'm going to meet Clayton.
Yeah, but also, why would Dudek take the call or agree to the meeting? Surely he must think, he doesn't know me that well. We had that one dinner last night. What's going on here? Maybe
he's just curious and quite a genuine, unconcerned gentleman.
Sure. Or naive, perhaps.
Naive, yes. And we see Dudek leaving his hotel room just as the maid is arriving.
Yes, and Clayton is lurking as well.
And as the maid goes into the room, Clayton places some sort of tape or does something.
I think he sellotapes the lock so it
can't lock.
Now, I presume he intended to do that as Dudek left, not aware that the maid would be there.
Yeah, but that's again, you know me. There's certain things about Columbo killers that really annoy me. That's just risky. How would he know that the maid was going, or the door was going to be there? How did he know he would have that opportunity? I don't think he's thought that through.
It's a tricky one. I don't really have an answer for you on that one. It's a very fortuitous moment.
The maid leaves after what's probably the shortest clean in history. She was in and out in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, doesn't seem to actually do anything, but then who knows, maybe that's normal practice.
And what Clayton does is he enters and he packs up some of Dudek's belongings.
Yeah, we saw this in Blueprint for Murder. The same sort of scenario where there was a bag being packed to fake a trip.
Yes. And he takes a headed envelope which has the government or...
There's some kind of official
stamp.
Logo or stamp on the envelope, yeah.
We're down to the sort of staff or the basement area of the hotel, and Clayton meets Dudek.
Yes, as arranged.
Yes, and he claims he has problems with a girl, and it's causing him sort of grief and he can't concentrate, and he's looking for Dudek to help him out.
Yeah, Dudek seems a little bit confused, like you would have thought he might earlier on.
And Clayton, he tells him that the girl that he has an issue with is from Dudek's country.
Yeah, not stipulated, but yes.
And he asks if Dudek would mind writing a little note in his language for her.
Yeah. Does he refer to it as your country or the old country? I'm sure at some point in the episode it's referred to as the old country, but again, it's not specified. But yeah, Dudek seems again not to really understand what's going on here, but he's persuaded.
Yeah, and he asks, what do you want to write, or what do you want me to write? And he's told to write, I am sorry, I was wrong, I am very ashamed.
Well, Clayton says it in a strange way, though. He says, or something like that. Words to that effect.
But I think that is what he writes.
Yeah, in the end, Dudek, obviously not being in a position to think independently, not knowing the scenario, just writes down what he's been asked.
And after this has been written, Clayton says he can't go ahead with the match, and Dudek tries to persuade him.
Don't worry, we can postpone the match, he says.
He's trying to be quite helpful here. He's a nice, genuine guy.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because if he genuinely was playing mind games the night before, like I suggested, and he lured him into that game so he could give him a severe beating, or at least kind of gauge the level of his play, perhaps, then to then turn around at this point and say, oh no, it's okay, we can postpone, there's no problem. It's a different approach. So unless maybe he's become so confident that he'll always be able to beat him, then that's the only thing I can think. Why he would then suddenly be, unless he just genuinely wanted to play a wee game of chess. Maybe there was no sinister motive.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe he just wanted to relax.
For me, it's one of a couple of things you mentioned one earlier, things that don't quite add up perfectly in this episode.
Okay, so just at that point, Dudek realises that Clayton is holding his travel bag.
Yes, and it's that moment of realisation.
Yeah, and he's pushed through a set of doors and into the garbage disposal compacting machine.
Yeah, and presumably crushed up and turned into some kind of cube.
We hear him cry out, again like Goldfinger in the car crushing scene.
That's it.
We go to the match game room in the hotel, and you've got TV cameras and the big chessboard set up.
Yes.
We focus in on the chess clocks.
Yeah, and Clayton's charming the crowd.
Dudek is obviously late for the big match.
Yeah.
The crowd start to grow impatient, but Clayton insists that if he's okay with Dudek being sort of 20 minutes late or so, then they should be. Now this again I thought may have been more of a clue. It was never brought up, but this does seem very much out of character with how Clayton would have acted if it was just a genuine lateness. I think he would be more upset. He would perhaps be calling for a forfeit. I don't think he would be very relaxed and saying, there's no rush here. He would think it was psychological warfare again, and he would be unhappy.
We do learn later on that Clayton was late himself, so perhaps he feels he's not in a position to be... Well, he doesn't feel that because he knows what's happened, but perhaps he would be able to play it off as saying, I was also late, I couldn't make a big deal out of it, I was trying to entertain the crowd.
Perhaps, but that sounds like someone who would be the attitude of someone with extreme confidence, and not someone who...
But he was always trying to portray himself as someone with confidence. Okay, you saw that with the steak and horror movie comment earlier on, and we see it again later on with Columbo.
Okay. Anyway, he offers to play members of the audience 10 at a time.
Yeah.
Which I think is a fairly common trick for chess grandmasters.
And he actually does go on to do that.
We're outside the hotel now, and we see Columbo being told by another cop that a body has been found, and this time it's not a false alarm.
That's it.
And we go to the hotel basement where the trash compactor is, and Columbo is told it looks like that the victim Dudek slipped into the trash compactor.
Yeah, they talk about grease and oil being around in it being possible.
I find it hard to believe that a machine of that size and that could take a human body would not have some sort of safety gate, or you could just...
But clearly it didn't, because he was able to be pushed into it.
Yeah.
It's like a design flaw.
Okay. Columbo wonders why Dudek was down in that area in the first place. And then we have a cabbie, a taxi driver arrives.
Yeah, I wondered who that was. He looked familiar, but you think that's not a credited role?
Couldn't find it in the credits. So
Perhaps another challenge.
another challenge, yes.
Because we did so well with the visitor to
Yes,
the boudoir in the previous episode.
the John.
Yes, the Cincinnati guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, another challenge for our listeners. If you can identify the taxi driver, the man who plays the taxi driver, and preferably where we might know him from, that would be great.
So this taxi driver confirms that he had been assigned the job of picking up Dudek from the back of the hotel, and he was taking him to the airport. So it looks like,
Well, it all seems to fit. They're going to find plane tickets booked. They've got a bag that's been packed in a hurry. You've got a note, which we're going to come to shortly, saying he couldn't take it anymore. He had to go. You've got the taxi driver saying he's been booked to take him to the airport. It all seems to fit, superficially at least.
and Columbo, the final thing in this scene is that Columbo has shown how the trash compactor machine works.
That's it.
We now go to Dudek's hotel room, and Berezovsky, he doesn't believe this theory at all. The theory is that Dudek was under pressure, didn't want to play the match, and has been sneaking off.
Yeah. When we do get the impression that Columbo is happy to buy that story at this point, he's not got any reason to disbelieve it, so he's not just challenging it for the sake of challenging it.
Oh. And Berezovsky, he's unimpressed with Columbo's underling, one of the other cops that's there.
Yeah, once he establishes who's the senior officer, he's quite insistent on going to the top, if that's the way.
But Columbo explains that his understanding is that geniuses can act unpredictably when under stress and pressure, and that Dudek did have a doctor travelling with him to this competition.
Yeah.
But what's the explanation for the doctor?
Well, obviously we know from the earlier scene that Dudek had retired through ill health. I think diabetes is the diagnosis. So obviously, I don't know how diabetes was treated in the 1970s, if it was the same as we would have now with insulin injections. I imagine perhaps it was. But maybe they weren't quite so well informed as they are nowadays. They perhaps were more cautious with the treatment. Sure. Which is why you would maybe be travelling less and so on. Yeah.
And so Berezovsky says that it was a GP, as you say, for his diabetes. He was not a psychiatrist. So that wouldn't explain why he didn't have any sort of breakdown and under the stress and the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the whole team is dubious of the idea that he would be behaving erratically like that.
He says that was just a member of the team. There's the physical trainer, he himself is his manager, his coach, although he doesn't like the fact that Columbo tries to compare him to a football coach.
That's right, he's not impressed at all with that comparison.
Linda Robson, the match fixer, she's in the room also.
Yep, she's particularly adamant that he would not be behaving in a stressed or erratic way.
Yeah, she says she's been with him recently for a number of months, and her mother before her was friends with Dudek, and so she knows his personality quite intimately.
This made me wonder if the entire match was something that she had devised to get back at Clayton because she hates him, knowing that he would lose this game.
Yeah, you see, that's what they could have, and perhaps with the first draft of the script had that, and they had to cut it out and thought, well, we'll lose this.
We've had this in the past where we've had to make this sort of leap of imagination to fill in some blanks. So that's one possible reason for those threads existing.
But she sort of sneers at the suggestion that Dudek was intimidated and didn't want to play in this match. And then we have another cop, a uniformed cop, provide Columbo with the travel bag that they found, Dudek's travel bag.
Yeah.
And it contains at this point in time normal travel items.
Yeah, and is there a mention of dentures in this scene? They don't identify the toothbrush as being wrong yet, but I'm sure that there is a mention from this cop to Columbo
it says
that he had dentures.
Yes, that was established, I think.
And it's almost a throwaway line, and it's going to be very important later on.
So at this point, Clayton appears in the room, and he presents Berezovsky with a note he says he found under his door, or his maid did. Columbo asks to open it, but he does this the usual thing of being quite subservient here. He wants to shake the hand of Clayton, and I think we have a nice clip, which
it's a funny one this time. Yeah.
You're the champion, aren't you? I want to say it's a great honor to meet you. I've got a cousin up there in Albany. He wears big, thick glasses, and he thinks you're the greatest thing in the world.
That makes two of them.
Hello, Linda.
I mean, that's a great moment.
Yeah. Nice bit of humour.
But we do get also at this point Clayton, in my view, overreacting.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the point he makes the assumption that Dudek's dead, but even before that.
Well, he does the thing of trying to say too much. So what happens is Berosky reads the note, and he reads out the thing about being wrong and etc.
Yeah, and it's the exact thing you say. The killers keep doing this. Yeah. It's like, oh, here is my theory, all nicely wrapped up. All the pieces fit. Isn't that great?
Well,
let's go home.
Yeah, because Clayton says he suggests that the reference to being wrong referred to him being there for the match, and then he calls him a poor and tortured man. So again, instead of just being quiet,
he comes out with all this nonsense.
Borowski confirms that the handwriting on the note was Dudek's, and he at this point seems to resign himself to the theory that he was leaving in disgrace. Yeah. But Linda, she still insists otherwise.
Yep, she asks to speak specifically to Columbo and makes that point.
Mm-hmm. Clayton offers his condolences to Berezovsky, but we get the big reveal as he does this. Now, what's this big reveal?
Yeah, like I kind of hinted at a wee bit earlier, that there's not a death yet. Dudek's not died, and Clayton assumes that he had.
And what we have here is Clayton, and this is the first of a few times he does this. He's in shock because he assumed he was dead. And it takes a while to realise that he should be acting happy. He should be delighted about this.
Yeah, and I think you can imagine that Columbo might be getting
bit of a
nod and a wink.
Pique his suspicion here.
Yeah.
We're in the same room, but it's later in the evening. And Borowski's on the phone to the embassy, and he's getting annoyed with Columbo, but Columbo interrupts him.
Quite insistent, yeah.
Yeah. And he has Dudek's shirt from the night before.
Yes, that he was wearing to the restaurant with Clayton.
And he asks if a diabetic can eat garlic.
It's a strange question to me.
He confirms he can, but that garlic wasn't on his prescribed diet, the prescribed menu.
Yes. Now, yes, so I assume then that Columbo has read this prescribed menu, and asking if he's allowed it is just his way of introducing this query.
Berezovsky is he understands a lot of what's going on here. This is the first time he does this. And he understands that it means that Dudek must have slipped out and ate somewhere else or eaten somewhere else.
I think the impression I got is that he already knew that. He was already aware that he'd snuck out because they'd reported him missing and then he showed up.
And he gets upset that Columbo implies that he may be embarrassed about being sort of remiss or derelict in his
Well, it's not even implied. Columbo states quite clearly, it wouldn't be your fault if it was this, but in these circumstances, perhaps you may feel responsible.
Yes, because effectively he is a bit of a babysitter for him.
Minder almost, yeah.
Yeah, and it may seem trivial, but I guess that what they're trying to imply is that back in the 70s, that, a Russian chess grandmaster is a god.
Okay.
And the powers that be in Russia would not take kindly
would not look kindly on this, yes.
Yeah, this type of irresponsibility.
Yeah.
And Columbo asks about his dentures that was referred to earlier on.
Yep, this is where we get another important moment.
Yep, and Berezovsky confirms that Dudek did wear dentures.
Yeah, and they have this almost needless conversation about what type of toothbrush you use for dentures, because the trainer is immediately able to identify the toothbrush as his.
It's a bit of a trope as well. So Columbo references for the first time his grandfather.
Right.
He says he's worn them since he was 40, or did wear them since he was 40, but he'd never used an ordinary toothbrush.
Yeah.
And that was what was in Dudek's travel bag.
And I think it's similar to the bit about the shirt. Columbo's taking a long road for a shortcut to get to the information he wants to.
It's exposition for ourselves, isn't it? So
essentially, yeah, but it's not the first time I mentioned it in the restaurant as well. There's quite a lot of clunky exposition in this. I hope I'm not offending the writer of the episode, but it does seem there's a few points in this particular episode where they struggle to get the information across. They're saying things that they should be able to show us.
And again, Berezovsky immediately understands the significance of this. He did not pack his own bag, so therefore it wasn't an accident, and Columbo agrees that this is certainly a strong possibility.
Yeah.
We go to the hospital.
Yep, my first immediate note at the hospital, and I know it's not the first thing we see, but we find out that Clayton's there, and I'm saying, why did he not just confess? If you're going to show up at the hospital just after being told, oh no, he's not dead, and you're not a personal friend or an acquaintance.
You think it's suspicious behaviour?
I think it's tantamount to a confession.
Okay. Clayton, yeah, especially Clayton is inquiring of a nurse how long until after surgery until Dudek can possibly talk.
Yeah, he gets 10 to 24
He says
hours.
at least, yeah, it's quite a wide range, isn't it? At
Yeah.
least 10 hours, I think she says.
Yeah.
And then Linda arrives and explains that she needs to get Dudek's medication because he still needs to take this.
Yep.
And he has a number of medications.
Another critical moment, which is
Mm-hmm.
a bit clumsy and leads to a baffling plot point. But anyway, he sees this list of medication.
Well, before that, Clayton admits that he had met Dudek last night.
Yes, he plants his story with Linda about how he beat Dudek in the game. This is all leading into
Must have shook his confidence, and
Yeah.
this is perhaps an explanation as to his actions.
But if that was the case, why didn't he mention it when he was in Dudek's room earlier? And I think Columbo actually pushes him on that point a little bit later in the episode.
But it does offer an explanation, however.
Yeah.
So Linda has a list of these medications. There's quite a number of them. And Clayton looks at the list for a brief moment. She tells him that he doesn't need this medication until at least 7 o'clock. And I'm not sure if that's the morning or the evening. I've sort of lost track of where we are in the day.
Yeah, it's yet more clunky exposition. Look, here we're setting out a timeline for you to follow, you simple viewer.
Anyway, so after quickly viewing the list, Clayton goes downstairs and he starts to note down the medications that he saw in his notepad.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd written down here was he's memorised the list chess skills, but it's not really, it's a different skill altogether, isn't it?
course.
Photographic memory isn't something you need in chess.
Hmm.
Memory of moves and how a game is played is not the same thing as immediate recall of something you've just seen.
But you may have both skills.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that the note I took about being a chess skill is not correct.
Columbo arrives as he's doing this, and Clayton has to cover up by saying that he was composing a note for the flowers that he was going to send. And he goes outside and Columbo follows him.
Yeah,
Because he's
I like
left
this
his-
bit. This is for me the best part of the episode.
Oh, okay, explain it.
Columbo, he has to try 3 or 4 different ways to try and get Clayton to come with him or to spend time speaking to him. Ultimately, what Columbo's trying to do here is to get him to go to Kosherama. That's the restaurant he'd been at previously.
But the reason why he followed him out was because he had left his pen initially.
Yes, Columbo's found this pen. Whether he would have been following him out anyway, I suspect perhaps he would.
Yeah, well,
'Cause-
I think you mentioned some of the ways he tried to coax him. I think the first thing he says is it offers him to go for ice cream.
Yeah, normally Columbo gets them with the first one. They're in such a spin, he's a police officer, they're going to go along with him. But Clayton doesn't. He's a wee bit sharper. He's aware of what Columbo's trying to do. He's not interested in going with Columbo, so everything that Columbo tries, he's just brushing it off.
Yeah. He actually says that he wants to learn more about chess, and he compliments him, and I think he does the Columbo trope here of, again, presenting himself as being inferior to him and trying to playing his ego.
Clayton doesn't care. Read a book, he says. Go and learn from a book.
Correspondence course, I think he said.
Sign up for my my website tutorial, they would say these days.
But I think what he does is he hooks him by talking about how he's confused about the note. And this, again, would interest Dudek. He wants to know more about this.
Clayton, yes.
Sorry, Clayton, yes. And he's confused as to why Dudek did not use
his own notepaper.
Yeah, he used some sort of cheap.
Yeah. Now, I like the response that you get. I mean, first of all, Clayton gives him a duff excuse, but then Columbo presses the point. And Clayton comes back with something that I quite often wish folk would say to him.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Lieutenant, you're asking me why someone in an irrational state failed to act in a rational manner."
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to make a separate point here because this is fine, this is good. The kind of thing, it's almost the show being self-aware.
But sorry to interrupt you here. It was very similar to last week's episode when Mayfield said that he couldn't think like a dope addict.
Yes, and also similar to the week before,
Mm-hmm.
when you had the reporter saying that he couldn't do Columbo's job for him.
Yeah.
So you've got these three very specific moments where the script is letting the show appear self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it is self-aware.
Okay.
I think it's almost like it's retrospectively self-aware, but it's not. It's still missing things in its own episode. There's still things in this episode that aren't working.
Sure.
That it's not caught, but yet it's got this bigger point that it's saying, "Oh no, look, we are aware of these things," but I suspect it's not quite there.
Okay. We cut away to a scene in the car now. So he's agreed to accept this lift,
Yeah.
and Clayton is responding to Columbo's issue about the toothbrush discrepancy. And this one, I really dislike this explanation, which Columbo is happy enough to accept on the face of it. So,
Yeah.
what happened? The suggestion is, by Clayton,
That's right.
is that the reason there may have been a normal toothbrush packed is that perhaps the bellhop packed on Dudek's behalf. Now, I do not know what circumstance. You would never ask a bellhop's the person who brings your suitcase from the lobby to your room. You would never ask a bellhop to quickly pack your bag. I mean, why would you do that?
I don't know. I bought it because I thought maybe it's a VIP service that's common in these hotels, but
The bellhop wouldn't do that. Like, no, you wouldn't
some kind of
pack
concierge
only some of my clothes, bellhop. I mean, you should never do that.
grab me a few things. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I think, again,
He's offering too much of an explanation here.
exactly the point I was about to make. Clayton's doing the typical Columbo killer thing of having all the answers.
Columbo then asks why he was 5 minutes late for the match the previous night, and he said that he stopped to get a new transistor for his hearing aid that went out on him. And that was when he threw it at the wall, when he had his little sort of mini breakdown.
And this becomes a critical moment later on.
Mm-hmm. Columbo also wonders why Dudek did not sign this supposed note that that he was leaving.
Yep. And Clayton continues with all the answers, which is exactly what I was just saying. We've got this self-aware moment. You're asking someone in an irrational state to act in a rational manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like he's completely forgotten that he's just made that point
Sure.
and starts giving all the
Mm-hmm.
answers to try and rationalise things. It's why I think that line is almost disingenuous in the way that they use it. I just think it doesn't make sense for this supposed genius to be right on the ball in one scene and then moments later completely blow his own position.
I think that what you've just said there is quite interesting as well. That's a supposed genius. Now, what you could say is that people have discussed this for many years. He's a chess genius, no doubt.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say he's a genius in other fields, in the field of murder, of psychology, of anything
Indeed.
else. And in fact, someone who perhaps is a prodigy, a very focused person. Bobby Fischer himself did not have great interpersonal skills. He was very focused. He would not have been considered a genius in interpersonal skills, dealing with other people. So, yes, he was a chess genius, but I think his actions, how he responds here, shows that he's not a genius in other aspects of life.
Sure.
Columbo wants... Now, the next point he makes is, he says he's trying to establish who would have benefited from Dudek's death. And this is the first sort of spar. It's the first indication, the first reveal to Clayton that he's perhaps looking closely at him.
Yeah.
And Columbo deliberately misses the turning for the hotel and invites Clayton to eat with him, or at least keep him company while he eats.
And then we're right back to Clayton being sharp again and saying, oh, I know why you're bringing me here.
Okay, yeah, so
I know what you're doing.
Well, they go to the restaurant. This is the restaurant where Dudek and Clayton had eaten the previous night.
Yeah.
They enter the restaurant and Columbo orders escargot for both of them. And Clayton immediately, as you say, understands why he's here.
It's so frustrating. They spend half this sequence
Mm-hmm.
trying to show us that Clayton's not an idiot, and the other half showing Clayton being an idiot.
Sure.
It's so much of a clash. It was jarring for me. It was just, I felt that although I enjoyed the bits of sparring, it was a badly put together sequence, and it harmed the show. It harmed this episode.
Okay. Clayton asks the waiter if it was a good photo. A good photo, obviously, that the police had shown him in order to ID him.
Bit of sarcasm, yeah.
And
it's apparent that Clayton doesn't like Columbo's games. He makes it clear here that he's not wanting to play along with anything.
he's about to leave.
He is.
He says he assumes that was the only reason he'd been brought there, to ID him. But Columbo says that he does have more questions.
Yeah, he says, if you don't have any more, or I assume you don't have any more questions, and Columbo says, oh no, I do have another question.
And there's a nice bit here where Clayton tells Columbo, he says, you work hard, you're pleasant enough, but why keep up this pretense?
Yep, which is exactly what he's been doing the last part of this last scene, is Clayton trying to say to Columbo, I'm not playing these games, stop trying these things with me.
And at this point, Clayton admits to Columbo that he had told Linda about the meeting in the restaurant the previous night, so he wasn't trying to hide anything here.
This is where Columbo makes the same point that I made. If that's the case, why didn't you tell us in Dudek's hotel room earlier on when you brought us the note?
But I'm happy with his response, and I think it's a genuine response, or it's an acceptable response. He says that in doing so would be extremely disrespectful. He would have to let other people know, the press would have got wind of it, that who'd won this match, and that would have disrupted the entire dynamic and relationship, and it wouldn't have been fair, it would not have been right. So he was trying to conceal the outcome of the game.
We maybe let him away with that one.
Mm-hmm. We also have another, what happens here is Columbo removes or produces Dudek's chess set.
Yes, this is a key moment.
Yeah, and he can't understand why he would have left this. We have a nice clip here of this discussion.
I almost forgot. There's something I wanted to show you. Kind of scares me carrying this around. It looks so valuable.
It's very beautiful.
They tell me these are all hand carved, solid ivory, and very old.
Knight, bishop, rook, pawn.
You know, I'll tell you why I brought this here. It wasn't just because it was so beautiful. This particular set belongs to Tom on Dudek, and that bothered me. As a matter of fact, I couldn't sleep last night.
Really?
Yeah, it seems to me that if an artist takes a trip, well, he's going to bring a sketch pad, and he's going to bring his pencil. And if a pool player goes somewhere, he's going to take his pool cue. And I just couldn't figure out, why would a great chess player forget to pack his chess set? Particularly if it was a valuable one.
That's a very telling observation.
Do you think so?
I do.
Yeah, they get into it a little bit.
Yeah, again, it's nice sparring. It goes back and forth here.
There was one point that I wanted to ask, and I think, or I hope you might be able to help me with this.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about this game of chess, and this is obviously critical here to motive and everything else. This one game of chess. Is it normal that two grandmasters, two of the best in the world, would be able to finish a game in a single evening that way, like in that period of time that they had to play?
One game?
Yeah, one game of chess.
I think it's possible. I mean, I'm not sure how long. I think it's like anything else. They can take longer. But I think, the passage of time we're led to believe is, maybe 4 or 5 hours, perhaps?
Yeah. Is that normal? I always assumed that these games could take days to play.
I think they could, but also I think they could be over quicker as well. I think it's acceptable. I don't think it's unrealistic.
It's not a major plot hole or anything.
We then find that Columbo he's been given a beeper from the hospital, and that goes off, and he makes a call as Clayton listens in to the news that someone or something has been moving around and everything is going to be fine.
Yeah, you can see the panic on Clayton's face, but it's soon to be assuaged.
It was in fact Dog.
Yes, Dog's fine.
Now this was actually like this. It wasn't just a moment of comic relief. He was using this as a tool to gauge the reaction, to
Yeah.
see how Clayton would respond.
You wonder if that even was the vet on the phone.
Possibly not. But either way, Columbo used it.
Yeah,
And
Columbo's wanting to see, or perhaps is wanting to see, how will this guy respond to thinking that Dudek's okay.
Well, I think Clayton's reaction betrayed more than any answers to questions that he provided. I think at this point, Columbo is starting to focus and hone in on...
It's also very skillful lip reading if Clayton's been able to see... Is his hearing aid working at this point?
Yeah, I think it
Oh,
was.
it's working. That's a stupid point then. Don't worry. Never mind me. That's fine.
And then Columbo leaves him in a hurry, and I think that's deliberate as well. So he's leaving him with his own thoughts and worries.
Yeah, hanging in that one, yeah.
We're back to the hotel lobby. Columbo's leaving the elevator, and he bumps into Clayton. And Clayton misses the elevator going up, so he's trapped with Columbo for a few moments. And Columbo seems quite pleased about that.
Yeah. Columbo likes his little convenient conversations, yeah.
Clayton inquires about Dudek's health, and Columbo says it's good news. He's stable, and Clayton again seems to take a moment too long to respond in the way that he should, i.e., by being happy, that's good news.
Yeah.
And I think Columbo picks up on this.
Sure, and I think at this point we should point out this is all quite a compressed time scale, because we saw him when he left the hospital. He knew he only had until 7 with the meds. That was when the meds were going to be administered, so there's a very tight window between the time he leaves the hospital and the time that these meds are going to be administered to Dudek, if he's going to do something about that.
We then have quite a nice exchange. Columbo says that he wants to mention something, but Clayton will probably have forgotten about it. And Clayton demonstrates his power of recall by reciting the first sentence that Columbo said to him backwards.
Yeah, he's showing off that he's got a great memory, which is basically the point that Columbo wanted to make.
And this, to go back to what we discussed a moment ago, this is the first time that Columbo is probably up against a genius, certainly a genius in some field.
Yeah.
One of my favourite episodes, which we will get to in due course, sees Columbo up against a real genius.
Okay.
In a house full of geniuses, or an organisation full of geniuses.
It's like a cult.
Not quite, but it's a great episode. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
But anyway, Columbo tells him that he's checked with the medical supply company, who confirmed that he did get a new transistor for his hearing aid the other day.
Yeah, that part of the story.
Before the match, that matches. And then he does one more thing just about...
we're still not quite got that established in the show yet.
It's the first in a while, actually. I don't think the last few episodes have had this.
It's kind of like the third time in this episode he's done something like this. He's always had one more question or one more point to make, but this is the most explicit one.
And what he does is he produces Dudek's sort of game journal, his log, and he notes that the last game that he played, Black resigned, so White won. And then he says that in the restaurant, Clayton, according to the waiter, was playing Pepper, which he assumed would have been Black, because Dudek was playing with the white salt.
Yeah. Clayton just says no.
He says no, we weren't in that. Well, that's the only, I suppose that's the only response that he can give. And Columbo can't argue back.
Well, no, that is a good response, because he could have tried to explain it away and come up with something convoluted and clearly wrong.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think no is fine. Just because that happened to be black pepper and there was white salt doesn't mean those were the colours they were playing.
But Columbo does not seem entirely convinced by that, but nothing he can do.
Yeah, no, I think Columbo is well down the road to where he's going to get to with this episode.
We're back up to Dudek's hotel room, and Clayton again, he messes with the lock whilst the personal trainer, the fitness coach, is in the room.
Yeah.
And he then leaves, the coach leaves, and he can gain access. But how? I don't know any hotel. Firstly, I don't really know any hotel room which doesn't automatically close over, but also don't know anyone who would go into a hotel room for any period of time and not close the door behind them. It's not something you would do.
No, it's a very
convenient, contrived,
fortunate circumstance for him.
So when the coach leaves, what does Clayton do?
Well, he sneaks into the room and he substitutes some of the meds that are going to be taken. We talked about the timeline, so this is obviously still not that long after the first hospital scene.
Mm-hmm.
So he substitutes something, we never find out what, for the medicine that was required by Dudek that Linda was coming back to collect.
And I think we both have quite a problem with this itself.
More than one problem.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, how did he know they were going to be collected from a private supply in that hotel room?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was ever made explicitly clear.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he knows that Linda's going to collect them, so maybe we can let him away with a leap on that one.
But the issue,
the
the bigger issue is this. So he's taken a note of all these medications. Where would he possibly be able to source these from in exactly the same bottles with the same labelling on it? And again, you've got any bottle's prescription would have his. I've not even thought of this before. They would have his own name on it. So he's.
Well, you would have thought so, unless it's something imported or something like that. But even then, how's he going to mimic that?
Yeah, and how does he know what damage or otherwise these will do? It may be a case that, if it was a doctor, that's fair enough. If it was last week and it was Mayfield, that's understandable.
It's not like you can Google it.
Exactly. So something might have 5 milligrams, and he orders things that is something that's 10 milligrams strength. Because again, here's the thing. He's taken a note of it, but he's got to get something different. If he just gets the same stuff, then
it's no use.
It's no use.
The same job.
So if there's something with a certain strength, what's he done? Is he's went and ordered something double the strength.
And when's he done it? He's spent almost all the time since he left the hospital with Columbo. In fact, he spent all the time with Columbo.
You can't just go about getting prescription drugs easily.
The only window he's got is between Columbo leaving the restaurant and meeting him at the lift. Mm-hmm. And that can't be that long. At the most, an hour or two tops.
And there's no way he can. The point is, there's no way he can know what damage or otherwise that these drugs would do to. How does he know that this will kill him? To be perfectly honest, this is a nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, the only slightly plausible thing I could say here, and please forgive me because it's very weak, is maybe he's thinking he hopes it'll kill him, but if it doesn't, things aren't exactly going to get any worse for him.
Yeah.
If it doesn't kill him, he's already up for attempted murder. He's going to get. Dudek's going to tell him what happened.
You're correct, Ian. That is very weak.
Yeah.
We have a tense scene here. So Linda and the physical trainer come back to the room.
I think it's a good moment for whoever made his hearing aid. Mm-hmm. Because despite being in the middle of doing this work in the bathroom that we've already seen is right next to the door to the hotel room, he's able to hear them coming in, finish what he's doing, get across the bedroom, hide in a wardrobe without them hearing or seeing anything. Yeah.
He gets away with it.
Yeah.
We're back to the vets.
Yep.
And Columbo gets a call from his sergeant as he's carrying the dog out of the vets.
He has to put the dog back.
It's an emergency at the hospital.
Yeah.
And a doctor shows Columbo to Dudek's room, where they're attempting to resuscitate him with the, what's that called again? The electric
defibrillators.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And he's given it all that to stand clear and
machine. So it's kind of a drawn out scene, and it's not even a long episode that requires padding. No. There still seems to be a lot of padding in this one. But anyway, he eventually dies after much faffing around and near death moments. I made the time of death in terms of from the moment the episode began, 59 minutes and 25 seconds, and I wonder, is this the latest first death that we've had? I think the Greenhouse Jungle would be the only one to compete, and I'm not sure when that one happened.
The other point about this is this the first time we see a death on screen? Normally we see the reaction, but this is the first time we see someone actually die. And I think
Dagger of the Mind we maybe do, but even so, it's one of the few at the very least. Anyway, if we had a plausible explanation for how Clayton knew this was going to happen, he would get a ton of credit, because when Columbo arrives and speaks to the doctor, or when Columbo gets the chance to speak to the doctor, he learns that there's no proof. They can't have anything to show him. The syringe was disposed of, the vial was disposed of, there's nothing for him to look at. There's no evidence whatsoever to tie anything untoward to the medicine.
Just one final point on this weakness of the method of death. I think that this has only been used as a hook to hang or to use the device of Clayton's photographic memory,
which isn't even a chess skill that we established earlier. So
I think
why would he even have that skill?
They wanted the killer to have this photographic memory, and this is the way that they've delivered this or presented this.
I know
to the
we've
audience.
talked about it earlier. I think that they have conflated that with the skill required to be good at chess.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being unkind. But in any event,
back to Clayton's room. The reporter on the phone apparently breaking the news of Dudek's demise.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple of moments here that flash me back to the previous episode with Dr. Mayfield and the two moments. So, first of all, the medication being altered to induce a heart moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, you had that last week as well, but he did that to get the opportunity to have the second operation. You've also got the being informed on the phone of a death that you caused.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those things happened in the previous episode as well. So it's quite an interesting little connection there.
We are down to the hotel bar by the looks of it, and Columbo joins Linda.
Yeah.
And tells her that although she finds it hard to believe, Dudek must have had at least one enemy.
I thought this was the hospital canteen. I thought she's come because he's died to the hospital. Am I wrong?
I'm not sure. I think doesn't really make much of a difference, but I thought she would look to be drinking an alcoholic drink.
Right, okay, maybe. I could be wrong. It could be they've gone back to the hotel, yeah.
And they have a discussion. Linda confirms that she handed the medications directly to the doctor, so the medicine she had taken from...
couldn't be tainted in between times. And this is where you talked about this earlier on, right at the top of the show. Mm-hmm. You get this long, drawn-out, agonising moment where instead of her implicating the man that she hates, Columbo has to bleed it like blood from a stone.
Yeah.
The information from her that she allowed Clayton to see the list.
Yeah.
Which Columbo already knew.
Yes, and she was not aware. This was for Columbo's benefit. She was not aware that he had this skill, this photographic memory.
Doesn't seem to have been aware, no.
So, but this is an ex-fiancé. This is the type of thing an ex-fiancé may well have been aware of.
And again, this is why I think they've conflated it with the chess skills. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we were meant to assume he would be able to do because he's good at chess.
Yeah.
But I don't think that follows.
Okay, so we go back to the hotel basement. And Columbo is looking at the disposal machine, the trash compactor.
And he's accompanied by Dog.
Dog's walking around and moves towards, or slowly lurches towards the entrance to the machine.
And we see Columbo's affection for him because he sprints up the stairs to save him.
He does. He can move quite rapidly when he is needed to.
Well, we know he's got these latent sports skills. We talked about that earlier on.
And then we have a nice bit of exposition by none other than John Finnegan.
Familiar face.
Yes. He explains that the safety mechanism, had the dog fallen into the machine, the safety mechanism would turn off the machine and, dog wouldn't be harmed to any great degree.
Columbo's incredulous at first, and then it dawns on him this is a critical piece of information.
Eureka light bulb moment here, isn't it? We arrive back at the match room in the hotel.
Yeah, it appears like Clayton's been taken up on that challenge he issued to the audience previously.
Yeah, he's playing...
Which I think must be that same morning, thinking about the timeline. Mm-hmm. It's the same day, isn't it? It's all happened in one day, which is, I think, unusual.
Yeah.
We've not really seen that before, yeah.
Columbo does 24.
It is almost real time. Greenhouse Jungle was similar. I think we had a lot of stuff in the one day, but this is more focused where everything's taking place in a very short period of time.
Columbo shuffles to the front and Clayton seems quite annoyed by this.
Well, this is we've had this conversation, I think we've seen this in the comments on our ColumboPodcast.com posts as well. Does Columbo do these things deliberately when he disrupts people, or is he literally just a bit clumsy?
Oh, without a doubt, deliberately.
Certainly in this case, yeah.
This is the tactic he uses. So Columbo tells him to finish his games, but Clayton insists that he makes his point now in front of everyone. Fairly risky to be, considering that you are you know yourself, you're a killer.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Columbo needs Clayton to behave in a certain way to make an additional point here about how he doesn't play well under duress.
Mm-hmm. Columbo tells him that the game that he's interested in isn't this one just now, it's the one that took place at the restaurant the previous.
It's critical to motive.
Yeah, Clayton, he insists again that he did not lose the match, and that Linda would confirm that. And they continue to play, and Columbo tells him that Linda cannot prove anything. It's only hearsay, it's only his word. So that means nothing. And then Clayton is playing to the audience, isn't he? He describes to the crowd the feats of past players.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number, something like a guy played 155 consecutive games and only lost 10 of them.
Apparently all of that sort of trivia that's thrown in is accurate, did really happen. And Columbo tells him that he has proven something there. And Clayton thinks that it's his memory in terms of matches and chess moves, but Columbo tells him it's his ability to memorise the medications on the list after only a glance.
Yeah, and this is the point I've been making. I think they've conflated two things here.
Yes. And Clayton is quite thrown by this revelation. Columbo suggests that he may have been copying the list when they met in the hospital.
Yeah, and then from there we come to another point that Columbo wants to make about the list, or at least the pen that was used to write the list.
Well, before that, Clayton gets more and more under pressure.
Well, you can see this, it's building and building through this scene.
So he's making these moves. Columbo is throwing these little hand grenades at him. We get a member of the audience asking for an autograph. So all this pressure's building, and we've seen before, Clayton, when the pressure's on, doesn't perform very well. And you can see this, he's starting to lose it. It's
an almost comical moment we get to at the end. We'll come to it in a few seconds.
Okay. So, you're talking about the pen, so discuss that.
Yeah, Columbo's discovered that the pen that was used by Dudek was, if not the same one, then a very similar pen to the one that Clayton left in the hospital, because they've had it all tested.
And Clayton is angry and is astonished that Columbo may think the finest chess player in the world would make such elementary mistakes as this.
Yes, that's the exact point he makes.
But just then, as if to disprove that, Clayton is beaten in one of the games.
Well, this is a strange one, yeah. He says to the guy, this is a new game, and then he gets beaten in about 2 moves. Now, there is a sequence of moves you can do in chess to get checkmate in 2 or 3 moves, but he would never make that mistake.
No, that's a good point. Okay, so that's called fool's mate.
Right.
And it's the shortest way of winning or losing a match. But the problem is that this is meant to signify
his breakdown under pressure.
Yes.
Essentially, completely implodes. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between completely imploding and doing something wrong-headed. That even his instincts would stop him from making that mistake.
Are you sure that this is the game that was a new game? I think that was the game before. Because I believe that this game had actually, a number of moves had been made. This is why it's actually a bit of a goof. There had been 2 moves made by Clayton before Columbo appeared on the scene, and therefore
he would have been in a stronger position.
Fool's mate would not have been possible.
So I'm not 100% sure. I got the impression that it was the one where he said, this is a new game, and then suddenly he'd been beaten.
I would need to double check, but I think that may have been a different day.
Okay. It doesn't matter too much. Although the point that they're making is when he gets under pressure, he makes mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think, and we might touch on this again at the end, this episode works best for me as a study of a psychologically fragile man.
Yes.
And I think a lot of Columbo episodes are really character studies. In fact, the majority of them are really character studies.
That's why it works. That's why it's great.
Yeah. And I think that the most sympathetic viewing of this episode is in that light. It's a study of a guy who can't handle pressure at all. I think there are a lot of errors made along the way, but we'll come back to that at the conclusion.
Clayton understands now the accusation that's being made and he demands proof.
Oh, I think proof becomes the key point for the remainder of the episode.
Yes. So we move back to the hotel basement where the trash compactor is.
Yeah.
And Columbo is shouting over the noise of the machinery. And he's trying to make himself heard. Clayton is exasperated.
Yeah, I think we can hear a bit of this because it doesn't matter exactly where in the conversation we're getting this because Clayton only has one point to make.
Now, Mr. Clayton, Right there at the top of the stairs, that's where Dudek fell. Hit the chute, slid down, came to this machinery. Now, if you were the murderer...
Will you give me proof, Lieutenant?
I didn't say you were the murderer. I said if you were the murderer. Wait, listen. It could have passed for a terrific accident.
Where is your proof, Lieutenant?
It could have been a perfect murder.
Will you give me the proof?
Can you read my lips now?
I think he wants proof.
I think proof is the key.
And he doesn't get it.
No.
We have to be honest here.
A couple of things. What Clayton does is he removes his earpiece. He has to remove his earpiece. He seems
the volume.
He seems to do that under pressure.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he takes it out so he can lip read. Columbo relied on him doing that in order to make this point.
Yeah. I mean,
Very
I think...
flaky.
I can't remember who it was Clayton said it to. Was it to Columbo or to Dudek at the start of the
Dudek.
episode? He said he does that to concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
He'll take it out. But I think perhaps at this moment he's taken it out because of the noise, the grinding next to him. I think Columbo's deliberately taken him into a very noisy environment where it might be overwhelming.
Ian, can you sum up what Columbo was thinking, how Columbo could prove this
so
murder?
Columbo remembers he's had this piece of evidence confirmed independently by a third party that the hearing aid wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So he obviously is puzzled at some point as to why, if someone was trying to kill Dudek, they didn't finish the job. They've thrown into this trash compactor, it's turned itself off. So he's challenging Clayton at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He is taking him to this environment where the incident took place. He's pushing him with little bits of information. He's challenging him with the scenario. And he's trying to make the point that only a deaf man could have committed this crime because only a deaf man wouldn't have noticed that the machine shut off.
Yeah.
So they're having this shouting match back and forth. Clayton's wanting to have proof of what's going on. Columbo's taking him step by step. We heard a bit of it just moments ago. And at one point, Columbo has arranged for a colleague to turn the machine off. But Columbo keeps yelling, even though the machine's off. And he says to Clayton, it would be great if I didn't have to yell over this machine. And Clayton says, why don't you get someone to turn it off? And Columbo's like, gotcha, it's off. Only a deaf person would know it was off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's troublesome for me because surely there's vibrations from the machine when it's on.
Yeah.
If it's that loud, that a deaf person would be attuned to.
Mm-hmm.
It's also troublesome for me because it doesn't prove anything.
It proves nothing.
If he's trying to stage it as an accident, and that was his setup, he set this up as an accident.
Yeah.
Turning the compactor back on would undermine that entire scenario.
It becomes murder.
It becomes immediately murder. So it undermines the whole plan that he's made.
Yeah. Although Clayton would have to in that, you could not have left him alive because then he would have been charged with attempted murder. So it would have had to have killed him. But the biggest problem isn't that sort of logic or that thinking. It's that, what does this actually prove? It proves nothing.
No.
There's no proof here. There's no evidence.
Columbo says the crime must be committed by a deaf man. It goes through 4 pieces of evidence, 3 of which don't require you to be a deaf man.
There was the pen and the ink.
Yep.
Okay. What else was there?
Well, he's got the compactor off and on, which is
Okay.
the one thing that requires him to be deaf.
That's 2.
He's got
The toothbrush.
Yeah, and the memorising of the
meds.
information, the
Yeah.
medicine.
Nothing there has anything to do with a deaf man.
No, and I think it's disappointing, and I know it's the 70s and so on, but you've got a person with a disability in a leading role in a show, which is great, but then you make the disability
His weakness.
a weakness, which I think is not very progressive.
No. But again, leaving that aside, it just doesn't. There's no proof. It doesn't make sense.
The whole thing's disappointing, and I think that fits in with the theme of what we've talked about.
Yeah.
The whole episode was entertaining, and we've talked about this way back in season 1 as well. It's an entertaining episode that has so many issues that it's hard to recommend it as a great one.
It's not a great one. It's not a classic one. As you say, it was entertaining. I enjoyed the performance of Clayton. I enjoyed Dudek. I
really enjoyed Dudek. I thought you
Yeah.
were particularly good.
So I enjoyed the premise. I thought it had more potential.
Yeah, and I think at the time, obviously from what you were saying earlier, there would be this relevancy with
the backdrop of the Cold War and the chess match.
Chess. I think chess is much more niche now than it was back then.
Sure.
So maybe it doesn't quite have the resonance. But yeah, there are things to recommend this show, this particular episode. But on the whole, for me, it didn't work. And I think we've gone through all those reasons why.
Yeah. Okay, before we wrap up, let's have a little bit of trivia and production information.
Always my favourite part of the episode, apart from the summary.
Summary is always the best.
Yeah.
4th of March 1973 was the original air date. Again, the 74-minute sweet spot. Didn't need any padding, or didn't have any padding this time.
Yep.
The familiar Jackson Gillis was the writer. The last one he was involved in was Requiem for a Falling Star 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a better episode, Requiem for a Falling Star.
And Edward Abrams was the director. He had previously directed Short Fuse, so this was his second and last effort in that role. Guest stars. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, we've saved this up for last because it's good.
Yeah, it's good. We'll start with Lawrence Harvey, who played Emmett Clayton. He died in 1973, aged 45, from stomach cancer.
Literally months after this.
Not long after it. I think it's quite... This often happens. You look back at people from the 70s and earlier, and they look an awful lot older. He was only 45. A 45-year-old man today. He looked, by today's standards, to be perhaps in his 60s. I thought he looked an awful lot older than 45.
Sure, but obviously we now know that he was very unwell at the time, so...
Yeah, sure. He was born in Lithuania, but classed as a British actor.
Okay.
Stage, TV, movie actor. Very prolific.
Okay.
And he helped pave the way for character of the working class British type such as Michael Caine, Tom Courtenay, Terence Stamp and Albert Finney. So he was he helped Trailblazer, exactly. Oscar nominated in 1959 for A Room at the Top, and he also starred in including The Manchurian Candidate, The Alamo with John Wayne and Darling with Julie Christie.
So he's a high profile guy. We've talked about this in the past, the studio going for named actors, like people would be familiar with him.
Yes. More interestingly, I think, these days is that he had a daughter called Domino Harvey. She was born out of marriage with stunning Vogue model Pauline Stone in 1969. And Domino went on, she was a model, but turned bounty hunter. And her life story was made into a movie in 2005 starring Keira Knightley.
Okay.
And she herself, Domino, not Keira Knightley, died in 2005 from a drugs overdose that year. But yeah, model turned bounty hunter.
Like Boba Fett.
Who?
The Star Wars reference.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'll probably offend people by saying that I'm not really a Star Wars fan.
I'm not sure that Boba Fett was ever a model either,
Okay.
so it's maybe not the best reference.
Just to confirm, I've watched the original 3 when I was a kid.
Well, you would know who Boba Fett is if you'd actually watched those.
Would I? Is he not a new one?
No.
Who am I thinking of?
Jango Fett's in the new one.
No, Binks or Jav.
Jar Jar Binks.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
it's nothing like him.
Has he not?
Right, let's move on quickly from Jar Jar Binks. You have to end the discussion there.
Okay. Jack Kruschen played Tomlin Dudek. He died in 2002, aged 80. Oscar nominated himself for The Apartment in 1961. He was in McClintock with John Wayne also, the original Cape Fear. He appeared also in The Adventures of Superman, the original Adventures from Superman in 1952, and The New Adventures from Superman in 1993.
Talking about people who look older, you're saying he died at the age of 80 in 2002? He was only 50 when this was filmed.
Crazy, isn't it?
That is a shocker.
Yeah, you'd have put him in, what, his 70s?
Yeah, and it's certainly significantly older than Clayton, rather than just a 5-year gap.
Yeah, that's true.
Although perhaps he was made up to look older, but still.
No, don't think so.
No.
He also starred, like a lot of Columbo guest stars, in the Batman series from the 60s, playing Eviel Ekdal.
Okay, the Scandinavian villain? No.
Perhaps. I think he was in 2 episodes.
Okay.
We also have Heidi Brill. She played Linda Robinson. She was German, died in 1991, aged 49, also from, unfortunately, stomach cancer.
Oh dear.
She was married to Brett Halsey.
We remember him from season 1, episode
Yes.
2, Death Lends a Hand.
Very well
Golf
remembered.
Pro.
Yes. Yeah, well done, Ian, yes.
I find it hard to believe myself being able to answer that question.
So yeah, that was she was the wife of the golf pro.
There you go.
And we had Stuart Nisbet. Now, he played a small part here, Dr. Sullivan, but he also played a pinstriped suit wearer in Short Fuse.
So it's the same director, so I wonder if there's a connection.
Ah, yeah, maybe he was a director's favourite.
Yeah.
As we said before, the match itself, or the whole sort of scene, was influenced by the Bobby Fischer, Boris Spassky episode, and the moves themselves that were referenced in the game, a lot of the people in the moves were real life chess moves
trivia,
and chess
yeah.
trivia, yeah. We said before, can anyone, the Lovejoy Antiques reference?
Yep, if anyone can pick up either on that or on Who Played the Taxi Driver,
Mm-hmm.
those are the two things that we would love to know.
Yes, that would be good if anyone could help us with that. I think that's me actually, Ian, in terms of trivia this week.
Yeah, well, we've kind of covered the summing up of the episode as well, so there's not much more to say. Where are we going to next week? The last episode of season 2.
Yes, we're making progress.
That's an exciting one, because we'll get to do the guilty or innocent verdict for the whole. We'll not spoil any of our thoughts at this point,
We won't.
but we'll certainly be talking about this week's episode as well as the 6 before and the one that we cover next week.
Next week we have Double Shock.
Double Shock. Ooh.
And this is an interesting one. They do things differently again. There's
Okay.
a different
Well,
different
I'll
aspect
be
to
watching
it.
that.
Again, I think I should just say thank you to everyone who has been downloading, everyone who's been rating, reviewing, everyone who's been contacting and communicating on Twitter and on the website, on the blog.
Yep.
We really do appreciate it.
Great interaction every week. We love seeing the folk chatting about Columbo, getting involved with those discussions ourselves as well. If you want to join in those chats, Twitter or more particularly columbopodcast.com, please consider leaving us a wee star rating or a review on iTunes. It doesn't take long to leave a rating, and it makes a big difference to how many people can see the show, what charts it shows up in, and so on. So if you could find the time to do that, it would be hugely appreciated.
It would. Okay, I'll see you next week, Ian.
Okay, cheerio.
You have been listening to the Columbo Podcast from Heard Yet Media.